Imagine every college student having their own AI powered teaching assistant, personalized, available around the clock, and tailored to help them learn faster. Could this be the future of higher education? This week, I'm joined by a founder of Cognify, an innovative AI startup on a mission to transform how students learn. Join us as we explore how AI could change the classroom experience and reshape the future of learning.
Because there's a study in 1984 called the Bloom's Two Sigma problem. I don't know if you're familiar, but the theory and well the results of the study was that if you were to cater, basically, if you were to cater and have one tutor per student, then there will be basically an increase in learning and increase in student effectiveness by two standard deviations, which is incredible. But that so while it proved that, like, everyone was like, okay, this could be the answer to, like, revolutionizing education. That project was clearly thrown out because it wasn't economically feasible. And so now that we're in 2024, 1984, people don't think about that study anymore. But now, for the first time ever, that Bloom's Two Sigma, that learning effectiveness is possible. And it's possible through these AI assistants. Now, you still need the human in the loop for that ambition and for an overall monitoring of overall student performance. But Bloom's Two Sigma is here, and it's doable.
Please don't forget to hit the subscribe and like buttons. Your engagement is what makes it possible for me to keep creating these podcasts. And we have a number of exciting podcasts coming up that tackle topics such as responsible AI and the future of work.
This is the OpenAI Changes Everything podcast with your host, Stephen Walther, where we explore how OpenAI is transforming the future of humanity.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I am very excited today. I have Paul Truax with me. And Paul, let me give a quick intro. Paul Truax is the visionary co-founder and CEO of Cognify Learning Company, an innovative artificial intelligence startup reshaping the future of higher education. Under his leadership, Cognify is pioneering the development of course-specific AI models designed to transform how students engage with learning materials, offering personalized support that helps them excel academically. With a passion for combining cutting-edge AI technology with education, Paul is driving a revolution in student learning experiences, making education smarter, more adaptive, and deeply personalized. Thank you, Paul. Thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, really appreciate it. Again, as we said before this podcast, really love the content that you put out so far. So very honored to be on the platform and happy to talk about what we're doing over here.
Awesome. And I should establish you're in Austin, correct? Austin,
We're based in
Texas?
Austin. Yep. That's right.
Fantastic. Yeah, I just moved here myself. I just started in
Great.
Austin, so I just experienced your, incredible summer heat, the, humidity, and I'm so happy that the temperature has been dropping a little bit,
Oh
um,
yeah,
but
yeah.
I've loved
Me
Austin
being
so
able
far.
to wear this is wonderful.
No, I
I
was
love it.
wondering about that. Yeah. Finally, I was a little worried. I was getting a little nervous. Well, let me dive right in. So what's the sort of quick elevator pitch for Cognify? What does it do? What's the product? Just pretend I know nothing. What how would you describe it?
Yeah, yeah. So I would say that Cognify is an education technology company that specializes in developing these very course specific AI assistants that are trained on things like chapter content, previous exams, professor lectures, really any course generated content. And on top of that, we also provide a dashboard where the professor can see, what topic students are struggling with, what types of questions they're asking, all in real time for the first time ever. So with our platform, a student gets a true course expert that's available 24/7, 365. And then our professors get insights into and control over AI that they've never gotten before.
Awesome. I love that. Very concise. And so if you had to describe the problem that you're trying to solve, how would you define it? What's sort of the central problem that you're addressing?
Yeah, well, I think it's two things. So our platform obviously is student facing and professor facing.
Yep.
So on the student side, the problem that we're solving is a lot of these foundational models like Claude 3.5, ChatGPT, they are built to be kind of a jack of all trades, but they're not built for the specific student. So one of the things that we're trying to solve is the problem of ChatGPT not knowing the specifics of a particular use case or a particular course, for example. So if a student asks, "Hey, can you give me some practice problems?" For example, can you give me some practice problems on, prepaid expenses or depreciation? Chances are Claude 3.5 or ChatGPT will give you some softball responses because it doesn't know those specific data sets. It doesn't know the level of difficulty in your course. It doesn't know the structure of the questions in your course. So that's not really any foundational model's fault per se. It's just that they weren't trained on those particular data sets. So that's the problem we're solving right there, having the right amount of difficulty and the right guidance for a particular course. So that's on the student side. And then very briefly on the professor side, I think, and Stephen, I would love to hear your thoughts on this, but I feel like in education, professors and institutions are scared that AI is going to be done to them instead of with them. Is AI going to replace me or something like that? There's a very scary position to be in, but we don't think it's going to be like that. And with our platform, you can see that we find tremendous value in bringing the professor into the training process. They decide what content they want us to train with. They could provide some feedback on how the model acts. But on top of that, again, going back to the dashboard, they have this control and this insight that, with our dashboard, it's not the Wild West anymore. Like, exactly what students are struggling with and why they're struggling on it. So those are the two problems that we're solving and that need to be solved.
That makes a lot of sense, and it helps my understanding. I was going to ask you an additional question around, well, why don't students just use, for example, ChatGPT or
Yep.
use, my favorite new tool that I've been using lately is Google Notebook
Oh,
LM.
huge fan.
Yeah, awesome. I mean, I just take
Yep.
anything I want to read and understand, I throw it in there and have it auto-generate a podcast, and it's great.
Yep.
I mean, it's kind of lazy on my part, but it does help to give an initial overview of, like, if I need to read a bunch of documents. So,
Right.
there are those general tools. I like
Mhm.
what you're saying about, number one, you're providing course specific material. So it
Yep.
knows sort of like, the exact sort of way that perhaps the professor wants to spend the material because it's being trained off of the professor's material. But also
Mhm.
something I didn't think about is that you're also providing context over around, like, this is for a student and what sort of level of understanding you can assume
Yep.
about that student. And so that make I would assume that would make a big difference too. So it doesn't present it in too, in depth or too, rudimentary level. It has to know the right level to be able to present the material in.
Right. Yeah. And honestly, like I kind of like that you mentioned things like, Notebook LM and things like that. I really believe that you shouldn't just use one AI platform for your whole entire study experience or professional experience or anything like that. I think a lot of these, sure, I mean, a lot of these, platforms do go head to head, for example. I mean, I wouldn't say that I wouldn't go as far to say as we're a competitor to ChatGPT. I think we enhanced, foundational models. I can see a situation where one student does prefer our platform over a foundational model, and that seems to be the case with our user traction. But with things like Notebook LM, fantastic for note taking and fantastic for listening to the content. Yeah, so I honestly would say that I would imagine and almost encourage a student to use Notebook LM and Cognify like together in their study
Yeah.
experience, and that goes for a few other platforms as well. So I think using multiple AI platforms is a good call, in my opinion.
So let's get specific on the experience for for students. So what
Mhm.
do they specifically, what can they do with your product? How can that help them?
Yeah. So going a little deeper into that course specific type of ideology. So the main capabilities of Cognify right now is it can give you very concise summaries of every chapter involved in the course, no matter what, at any point, at any time you want. Another thing is the unlimited practice problems that have that context built in, how the exam is structured, why the professor structures it that way, and that level of difficulty. Another great thing is topic insights. So if you ask it to explain a topic, one that's very, foundational models do a great job at that, but it'll kind of first say, okay, hey, what is your current understanding? Like, you tell me where your understanding currently sits, and then we can take it from there. So it's a very tutor-like experience. But on top of that, we can go even further into the details where if you continue down that conversational path, it'll ask, hey, I know we've been talking about this for a while. Would you like a real world scenario? Maybe that can help kind of solidify your understanding. And so when the student, engages and says, yeah, I am still a little confused. I would love a real world scenario. Our platform actually relates any concept to the geographical location of the university. So whenever students are walking around somewhere or going to a store or a part of town, it'll relate very complex topics into a real world scenario that they literally see every day. So when they go to those places, you subconsciously remember that material, and I think that's very, very valuable. It's a little Easter egg that we put in there, but yeah. So anyway, yeah. So anything like that, exam reviews as well. So that's what the product does. But from an experience perspective, if you allow me to kind of talk on that a little bit more, the experience from what we've seen from students and getting feedback and things like that is an ease of use and a lot of light bulb moments is what students have said. When you open up our platform, it's extremely intuitive. And because it has that context built in, you get to see a lot of light bulb moments happening. And one of the interesting things, Stephen, I think it's a great analogy, is we were conducting some feedback from some focus groups that we have, and this one student came up to me and she made a brilliant analogy. She compared any foundational model to us as it's the same as a comparison between paper maps and modern GPS systems. And so she brought that up, and I was like, okay, we'd love to kind of hear more about where you're going with this. And she said, well, paper maps and GPS systems, they'll both take you where you want to go. But a modern GPS system knows where you want to go, what roads you should take, when you're going to get there. It's specific to you because it has the context for your use case. And that is exactly what she saw with our platform. And I'm very we're very fortunate that analogy didn't come from us. It came from a student, and I feel like that really hammers it home what the experience has been like.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you about that. So one of the things that you promote about your product is it's very personalized. And I was trying to dig into exactly. I mean, you mentioned, okay, it knows people's geographic location, which is kind of cool. I also noticed that this is a minor thing. It knew what time it was at the beginning, which Chat GPT never knows what time it is. But and I know it addresses you by your name, and there's some aspects of it. So I know it's personalized in the sense it's personalized to the content of a course, but are you also like learning things about student habits or preferences or things like that? Is there also student personalization going on as well?
Yeah. So right now we are capturing a lot of student your data in terms of you go back to the dashboard, like what they're struggling with and at what point in the semester that they're struggling. But on top of that, we do want to increase our memory capabilities. I feel like it'll be really great to talk to a model and say, or for the model to say, hey, I know that historically we've covered a lot of this topic. I think we should hammer that home and move on to a few other topics or something like that, where the memory capabilities are very long lasting. We have those memory capabilities right now, but if I'm being honest, there's a lot of room to grow. I mean, our models very highly have high expertise, but their memory capabilities are not long lasting. It's kind of like the memory capability of a goldfish, if I'm being honest. But we have great partners at NVIDIA, for example, that we're talking to a lot about increasing our memory capabilities to further personalize the academic guidance, and also incorporating something like knowledge maps, for example, so the student can access their knowledge map and see, okay, here's like where we've been struggling historically, here's where we should kind of focus and things like that. So that's all to come. But right now, having those specificities has provided enough personalization so far, but we still have a long way to go.
Yeah, I mean, that's really fascinating. I mean, I know everyone has different learning styles. Some people
Yeah.
like, concrete examples. Some people like lots of text. Some people love diagrams. I'd love to see this thing evolve in such a way that it could, adapt to my favorite. I've, as we were just talking about with Notebook LM, I love that sort of like, kicking back and listening to the audio sometimes to be able to get the material. I'm not sure everyone would love that, but it would be good, if the system kind of knew my, learning preferences.
Oh yeah, for sure. And we've alluded to that very much. I mean, it's just this is just symbolic of the memory pursuit that we're on. But the fact that the model does know, like, hey, like one very small, like I know what day it is, I know this person's name. But also, embedding it doesn't. I want to clarify, it doesn't track the user, like it doesn't know that where they are physically, but
Right.
it does know the geographic location of the university, like that's
Right.
preset. But all of that, they're small symbols to our overall mission of making a truly personalized AI assistant. So again, we're working with great partners on bringing that to market, and I think everyone's going to be excited about the personalization to come.
Awesome. And to dive a little more in on the sort of professor TA experience. So how do I mean, I have, I don't know, I'm a professor, I'm putting together a class, I have a bunch of
Mhm.
PDFs, I also have textbooks. How do I load all that information in? And how do I also kind of like, I don't know, set my preferences or control how that material is presented to students?
Yeah. So I really love that you asked that question. No one's really asked that question before, and so really, with if you think about a custom GPT, really love them. They're easy to make. They're great. But the problem is that the research that we've done and the research that you can find about modern LLM technology, specifically RAG, retrieving data for your specific use case, RAG technology is fantastic, but when you upload a lot of unstructured data, we're talking PDFs with a lot of images, maybe even some annotations in there, some handwriting annotations, a lot of different fonts, a lot of different text. That can lead to the model hallucinating big time. So
Mm.
when it comes to the uploading process, the professor onboarding process, what we do is, first of all, we get into a contract with the university. We don't sell directly to students. We want every student to have this technology. So we sell directly to the university. And what that process looks like is the professor will upload their data to an encrypted area that we have on prem. And when they do that, we'll take that data, we will convert it all to RAG ready formats. We're talking anything from raw text, maybe even as complex as JSON or XML. And then that's what we train the model with. So that leads to a lot lower hallucinations, and which leads ultimately to a better customer experience. So that's from the data side. But from how the model acts, that right there is we go above and beyond to obviously incorporate the professor. So we actually interview the professor
Mm.
and get their motivations. I'm talking very subjective. The
Right.
objective thing is being handled with the data side, but let's talk about the subjective. So why are you teaching what you're teaching? You could have done anything.
Right.
You could have chosen any path in the world, but you're here at this university teaching this subject. Why are you doing that? What analogies have you related from complex topics into real world scenarios? Well, yeah, just give us something. Like, we want to know your teaching preferences. And so that conversation, you see professors just perk up. There was this one
Yeah.
professor that we were working with where he really loved the use case, but he was not a big smile guy.
Uh-huh.
He was very stone faced the
Right.
whole time.
Right.
But when we had that interview with him, that's the first time he smiled because he knew that he was being brought in, and he knew that his motivations were being heard. So with that said, we don't upload that to the model and have the model act like the professor. We don't want that to happen. We have the model reference the professor because the professors worked very hard to have those expertise. So
Yep.
the model is the professor's assistant. So it'll say, hey, it's really good that we're learning this because, professor sees this as very important in life because of X, Y, and Z or something like that. So it's all referencing the professor. So from the experience that an institution sees, you can see that AI truly is being done with the institution instead of to the institution.
I love that. Because, I mean, whenever you're reading through a bunch of material that professors assign, the professor has a certain take on it and they're doing
Yep.
it for a certain reason. And, it's great to be able to convey that somehow.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes a lot of sense. And it also sounds like from what you're talking about that in some ways Cognify is acting like a virtual teaching assistant more
Mm.
than a professor because it sounds like it's more in the role of like trying to be a representative of the professor, maybe take care of some administrative stuff, but also, sort of like the quizzing and sort of explanation. So it's acting in some of the roles. And I know you have a background in tutoring, right? And sort of like
Yep.
and so is that the way you're thinking of this? Is sort of like this is a kind of virtual teaching assistant, or is that too narrow of a way of thinking of Cognify?
Yeah, that's 100% how we're thinking about it because I mean, when I was tutoring throughout college, I would say that was the most impactful job I've ever had. There's no question about that. I mean, I get chills just thinking about it. Like when you take a complex topic that students are really struggling with and their stress levels are going up, they don't know what to do. They think, okay, if I fail this exam, then I don't know what I'm going to tell my parents, something like that. That can really have an impact on somebody. But when you take a very complex topic and dilute it down to where people can look at that and be like, oh, obviously, like, yeah, you just lit up a light bulb on my head that I will never turn off
Yeah.
because you just made it very simple. That is such a reward. And at the same time, though, the professors have so much influence over the students, which I think is a very good thing. I mean, I had this one professor who the only reason I really prioritize real world scenarios and hearing people out is because I had a professor that did that. Her name was Dr. Karen Farmer. Shout out, Dr. Karen Farmer. But yeah, so she was so good at, one, diluting things into real world scenarios, but also just being there for the students. And I think that with this virtual assistant, it provides the professor with context that they never had before via the dashboard. They can see exactly what students are struggling with. So that allows them to kind of tailor their approach a little bit more per class. But it also allows them it frees them up a little bit to provide a more personalized experience. So both platforms, Cognify and the professor, are working to provide a better student experience together, for sure.
So I have to ask this. So my background is in product management. And
Mhm.
so, immediately some questions come to my mind, like who's the actual end user here? Let me start
Mhm.
with that question. Is it because it sounds like, are you designing this system to, at the end of the day, if you had to make trade-offs, are you designing this more for professors, for universities, for students, for teaching assistants? Because it sounds like it could be falling into all these different categories. So if you had to pick like a primary kind of end user, what would you focus on?
As students, for
Okay.
sure, definitely. I mean, the students, they're the, I mean, they're the next generation of us. So, and I don't mean to say that just as a cliche or whatever you'd call it. I truly 100% believe that, and I've experienced that through tutoring the next generation is so motivational. So if we were to pick one, no question,
Yeah,
it's the student. Because on the professor side, what good is the professor dashboard if no one's using the platform?
right.
There's no data there. So we need to create something that students feel connected to and that they see a true use case on, for sure. So the student 100%.
Got it. So your end user is the student, your customer is probably the university that's paying for the
Yep.
system. And
Right.
if you were, do you have, are you using like objectives and key results right now? Are you tracking certain things for success? The reason I'm asking
Mhm.
about this is how do you know whether or not you're making progress towards success, that you're actually helping students?
Yeah, yeah. So this is in deep collaboration with our partners. So you're right. Like we do sell to the universities, but with that input, part of that contract is we gotta conduct a lot of interviews of the students and a lot of feedback. Then that comes from the professor. So with that said, when it came to some OKRs, at first, when we started to talk to our first clientele, we didn't have or we didn't want to assign any numerical metrics to this platform because it has simply never been done before.
Mhm.
And so saying like, oh, we expect these many queries is like, how did you come up with that? Like, oh, well, we kind of just guessed on it. So we definitely wanted to track all of the engagement through, for the dashboard. We have a few other metrics internally. But one of the things that we knew would happen was we needed to conduct consistent feedback loops, consistent feedback loops from the students. Like, hey, what do you guys feel about the platform? How have you used it? One of the big metrics, objective metrics that we're using is when and in what quantities are students using the model, like how many queries are they submitting and at what time of the day and at what point over the whole semester. The theory for some of our clients was, okay, we think that students are going to use this only when the tutoring center closes,
Hmm.
maybe like into the late night. That's when
Interesting.
people are going to
Yeah,
use the
yeah, yeah.
platform. But what we've seen, thankfully, is that students are using this at all hours of the day, but it peaks in from noon all the way to 11 at night. And the reason for that is because a lot of students, as it turns out, have morning classes and they get off at noon.
Right.
So thankfully, students objectively are using this platform. We're tracking towards like any small class would get 1,000 queries a week. throughout the whole day. And so that those objective metrics combined with the subjective, like, hey guys, how do you feel about the platform? Are you guys feeling more comfortable? And then combining that with exam grades compared to historic exam grades, I feel like those are good OKRs to start.
Got it. So the way you're thinking about it is, you know, just starting out, you're going to use engagement as sort of
Mm-hmm.
your main metric. You're going to track how often people are using it. Makes
Yeah.
sense. You have a new product, you want to make sure, you know, your end users are actually engaging with the product. And you're also doing qualitative feedback sessions to make sure that you're addressing any concerns that students might have with it. I
Yes,
guess
true.
I guess I'm curious. I mean, longer term, I'm just throwing out a suggestion here, but
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Please.
it would be great if you could show actual impact on,
Mm-hmm.
you know, reducing, for example, reducing the amount of time that students have to study to be able to learn the course material, or I don't know, being able to master the course material more, or if there's a way to like be able to show that your product is having a real impact on students' lives and be able to have some sort of objective measures around that you could present. I think that might be helpful for number one, you know, convincing people to adopt your product, but
Mm-hmm.
also just for internally for your sake to ensure that, you know, your product is progressing all the time or it's getting better. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out there.
Yeah.
Have you considered like I don't know some sort of more because engagement is great. I think that's a
Mm-hmm.
great metric to start with. I'm just wondering that like beyond that, you want some way to show that you're you know successful, that you actually having a positive impact on students' lives.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And I think the qualitative, the quantitative and qualitative measures that we talked about before, those do a good job of that, but we can always do better, no question. And I think that one of the things we're looking at is obviously we want to integrate with, you know, LMS systems like,
Yeah.
Blackboard, Canvas, Instructure, things like that. And the reason we want to do that is because we get to utilize a lot of exam performance data.
Mm.
So I think that is could kind of, you take us to the point that you're specifying. And we're very new right now, and I think that obviously the engagement is good. The traffic is amazing, but yeah, we need to objectively prove, no question, we need to prove that, hey, this is helping people no matter what. And from the feedback we've gotten from students and the traffic, it seems to be leaning that way. But any metrics that are new and that can be
Yep.
used, we want to use them because if there's a thing that we talk about with our engineering team that if the student thinks that it's remarkable and the student thinks that it betters their learning experience, if they think it's remarkable, then that means that it's remarkable. But if we, as the engineering team and the leadership team, thinks it's remarkable, who cares? Nobody cares. It has to be the user, and that goes for
Right.
both the professor and the student. So any objective metrics that we can have to prove that, we'll focus on and we'll bring to our platform for sure.
So let me ask a hard question.
Yeah,
I'm
go
going to
ahead.
throw it in. So I mean, I could see one reaction to your product because people have very mixed reactions to AI right now.
Mhm.
As you've said, I think you brought up some of the fears that professors have about it, but a lot of people, you know, there's all these fears about AI eliminating jobs, but
Mhm.
also there's a lot of fears about, I would think specifically in the case of like Cognify, of students worry that this would just create an automated layer between them and actual humans that they want to interact with. And the fear is, I mean, you know, as again, you have that background as a tutor, so you know how important sort of social interaction is for learning and you know encouragement and light bulb moments and all that stuff, which we won't get anytime soon with AI. I mean, hopefully, maybe you know, in a few years it'll get better, but how do you like answer that fear around Cognify becoming sort of an artificial layer between students and professors, and how do you answer that worry?
Yeah, I mean, it is. I do think that like over the next 5, 10, 20 years, like this is the first technology where we don't know where it's going to go.
Yeah,
We simply don't know that. And for example, we were testing out our conversation mode that we're going to be coming out with soon, and hearing these models talk, and it's very mind-boggling. And I know that advanced mode obviously is available now, and people
yeah,
can try that out. But yeah, hearing these particular tutors talk is very, very strange. But with that said, when it comes to keeping the professors in the loop, I feel like we'll always need a human in the loop. I mean, there's something to be said about, you can try to make a model or an assistant that mimics a human. You can try to do that, and sometimes it looks like we've achieved something like that,
Yeah.
but it is artificial. It's exactly what you said. Like, why? Like, we're living in an age of abundance right now. With, I mean, I'm just going off the top of my head here, but we're living in an age of abundance right now with there's a lot of food. You go to
Right.
HEB, or you go to Walmart or something like that. There's food everywhere. But why do you
By the
think?
way, for people outside of Texas,
Oh, right.
HEB is equivalent to Piggly Wiggly or to Safeway or yeah, I had to learn. Wait, what's it stand for? Howard E. Butts? Is that the guy?
Yeah, 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 definitely.
That
Yeah.
is such an awesome name. That's one of my favorite parts about moving to Austin, learning what
Great.
HEB stood for. But anyway, I'm sorry,
Oh, yeah.
interrupted you, sir.
Yeah, no, I mean, they say that it stands for here, everything's better, but it
Yeah.
stands for the guy's name. Yeah, it's very funny. But yeah, so you're living in an age of abundance where there's a lot of, there's a lot of food, but it's all like very processed, i.e., artificial. So why do you think there's podcasts about, gluten-free food or organic food or farmers markets or things like that? That's really gaining a lot of traction. And I think people, I mean, I don't mean to relate this to food or anything, but people want that authenticity. And an AI assistant is a great tool, but ambition belongs to the human.
Yeah.
Ambition and purpose into why you're doing that, that is something unique to us and something that I honestly don't think that any artificial intelligence can mimic. I truly don't believe that. So we need professors. We need them to embed the why behind what we're going to do. An AI model is really good for the what, but a professor and a human is really good for the why. And without the why, there's no how. So that's, I mean, I would love if you want to ask about like more details on this, that's great. But that's my original thought as we go
Yeah.
into a very unpredictable AI world.
Yeah, I guess the worry is there'll be like ATMs and bankers, right? I mean,
Mm-hmm.
where, yes, people love interacting with a real human, a banker,
Mm-hmm.
but it's so much cheaper just to put a machine in. And
Yeah.
and I worry about not so much professors because they
Mm-hmm.
bring reputation and research and all that stuff to a university. I worry more about like teaching assistants, lecturers, things like that, where, universities are always looking to cut costs.
Yeah.
And I worry that, there's a danger of universities sort of latching onto a product like this
Mm-hmm.
and misusing it as a way to sort of reduce the number of TAs that they're hiring for classes or other things with the thought that, oh, well, this actually is a good solution. So, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm putting you in a sort of uncomfortable situation
No,
here because
I
I'm
like it.
okay.
Yeah.
Well, no, I appreciate
Actually,
that, but
yeah, go ahead.
because it's like, on the one hand, I mean, your product, if it is able to replace like teaching assistants
Mm-hmm.
in some ways, that makes it great, right? I mean, it might, for certain, and I can definitely see for certain things. I mean, sometimes it's hard to get in touch with teaching assistants and they don't have time to, talk through everything, and having
Yeah.
an always available AI that knows the material in the way that you're designing sounds great. But on the other hand, I know, again, a lot of education comes back to social motivation and social
Yeah.
interactions. And so I worry about that future as well. So I was curious about what you think about that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if I'm being honest, Stephen, I'm not sure. It's possible. It's possible. I wouldn't say that it's probable, but it's possible that, kind of that middleman there between the professor and the student, like that TA, it's possible that I wouldn't say that it would go away, but that position can be changed to more of a subjective, more of a motivational route.
Yeah.
Because there's a study in 1984 called the Bloom's Two Sigma problem. I don't know if you're familiar,
No.
but the theory and well, the results of the study was that if you were to cater and have one tutor per student, then there will be basically an increase in learning and increase in student effectiveness by two standard deviations, which is incredible.
Yeah.
But so while it proved that, like, everyone was like, okay, this could be the answer to, like, revolutionizing education.
Yeah.
That project was clearly thrown out because it wasn't economically feasible.
Right.
And so now that we're in 2024, 1984, people don't think about that study anymore. But
Right.
now, for the first time ever, that Bloom's Two Sigma, that learning effectiveness is possible. And it's possible through these AI assistants. Now, you still need the human in the loop for that ambition and for an overall monitoring of overall student performance. But Bloom's Two Sigma is here, and it's doable. So with the TA, I think that they might move to more of a motivational route because that's something that can't be mimicked by any AI technology. But in terms of like doing, I see waiting in line for the TA going away.
Yeah.
I do see that.
No, I love that vision. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I'm glad you brought up that study. That's very
Yeah.
interesting. And I guess I've been hearing, because I've also been talking to people talking about like for middle school teachers, high school teachers, how AI is affecting that. And
Mm-hmm.
they're saying something very similar, that we need the human in the loop there,
Right.
but there's a lot of just crap that teachers don't want to do. They don't want to grade things. They don't want to
Yeah.
do, I mean, there's a bunch of stuff that really they don't get excited about, and so they love handing it over to the AI.
Yeah.
But the stuff that they're excited about can still be there for them, where
Mm-hmm.
they're actually having that interaction and light bulb moments with students. So I love that vision of trying to use AI to amplify rather than replace, teaching assistants.
Right. Yeah, definitely. And again, I mean, I'm not gonna sit here and say that I know, because, and I'm not gonna sit here and say that TAs are definitely not gonna go away. I can't speak to that. But again, I think a change in how a TA traditionally functions is gonna change.
All right. Now that I've asked you one hard question, I'm going to ask you another hard question.
Okay, go
Uh,
ahead.
so let's talk about the professor dashboard, which I think
Mhm.
is great. In my understanding, the dashboard, I looked at the screenshots. It gives information about what kind of queries that students are submitting, what time they're at. So I guess I'm getting back to sort of like privacy concerns about like there's a certain kind of, and this comes up all over the place in AI. This isn't specific to your product, but
Mhm.
how do you like figure out that line that you don't want to cross in terms of privacy when now you have a way to figure out, exactly what, I don't know, Sally is struggling with in
Yeah.
a calculus class. And when do you decide what information to sort of surface up to teaching assistants and professors, and what information is kind of private? Because we are getting very close to, if you're having nonstop conversations with an AI, we are getting very close to, a surveillance society kind of scenario. So
Right.
how do you avoid getting into Brave New World territory here, and provide just sort of the right information? Because at the end of the day, this is super valuable, right? I mean,
Yeah.
a TA can leverage this to figure out, well, maybe I blew it on my lesson, yesterday, because obviously no one followed what I was talking about. But on the other hand, I don't know how much information you want to reveal about particular students. So I'm just curious, how do you figure out where that line is?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think it's kind of cool because our very robust privacy standards were kind of derived from a very a very simple frame of mind, and this comes from our academic experience. I mean, that origin point. I'll talk into the specifics, but that origin point for like us, really valuing privacy was that whenever you're in a class, everybody has seen or has had this experience. I'm sure you have as well, where you're in a big class and you want to ask a question, but you don't want to appear to be the fool in that
Yeah,
class. So you just choose to not ask the question.
right.
And the reason why you choose not to ask is because people will know who asked it.
Yeah,
They will know, and they'll be, that was either a dumb question or thank you for asking it because I didn't want to ask it. Um, so we knew from a user perspective, in order to provide confidence to them that this platform is good to use, the institution, the professors will never see who is asking what. They will never see that. That'll be totally anonymous. And we have gotten some questions from universities and institutions like, can we get access to the raw data? Can we
yeah,
get it? We will sign today. We can get access to the raw data. That's not to say that they want to infringe on privacy. I'm not saying that. It's just we don't want to give them that, and we have highly efficient standards for this. We have heavy encryption. We have great AES 256 encryptions and things like that. But we don't want to compromise the fact that students can ask a model or an assistant whatever they want in total confidence and total comfort. So that's where it started. And we have all of our encryption standards and our compliance all in line. We're SOC 2 compliant, things like that. that all derived from allowing the student to be able to feel comfortable to ask whatever they want, whenever they want. Now, there's some data that it gets relayed to the professor, obviously, query volumes, how many questions are coming in, what topics are they struggling with. Our proprietary dashboard can read each query and determine what topic and really conclude what topic is this student struggling with, and provide that into a nice little graph. What time of day, and then what types of questions. Are they asking about chapter summaries? If they are, then the professor could probably go into that chapter content a little bit more. Are they asking about exam prep, or are they asking about practice problems, stuff like that? So that's data that we think the professor should know. But in terms of user data, like to identify the user, we don't do that, and we also don't want to train on any of that. We tell the institution we don't want any PII. We don't want that. We'll take names and emails to upload to the platform, but that's directory information legally. But any PII, we don't want it. You guys keep that.
So I love that. So you're collecting aggregate data, but no personally identifiable information. And that's great because that goes back to, I think, the earlier question about who your end user is. At the end of the day,
Yep.
you're focused on helping the student, even if
yeah.
sometimes that's a trade-off with what universities might want, what information. Because at the end of the day, you know that if you don't have the students there, you're not going to have anyone using your product. So you need to make sure protect their interests as a company.
Yeah. 100%. And we've achieved a great balance with that. I mean, we're protecting the university interest by giving them data that they never had before, but the student comes first. No question about that. And that's, again, I think a big testament is us. I mean, we can collect user data. We can get that PII for demographic purposes, but we're okay. We're good.
So how do you see yourself? You mentioned Blackboard and Canvas, and there's all these learning management systems out there right now, massive ones that every university is using. There's also applications like Quizlet that students use to test themselves and things like that. How do you see yourself like fitting into that ecosystem? Are you, I mean, sort of like grand plans here? Are you trying to like grow up to be an LMS at a certain point, become a full learning management system? You mentioned earlier, like right now, it might be hard to track your impact on grades because people are using these learning management systems to be able to track grades. Are you more kind of like in the Quizlet space, or are you thinking about integrations with these larger systems? Where do you see this heading?
Yeah, well, in terms of becoming an LMS, definitely not. Definitely not.
Yeah.
We think that Canvas and Blackboard have done an incredible job, and they have the market share they have for a reason. And they also have great ways to integrate with their platform. So we are amazing partners with Instructure, who creates Canvas.
Uh-huh.
So we love them, and yeah, so definitely in the LMS space, creating an overall big platform like that is not in our prerogative at all. But then there are applications when it comes to studying. So we want to be involved in the entire studying experience. That's where we want to be involved in. So with that said, when it comes to things like Quizlet, we can even throw Chegg in there. We are going to go eventually. We're going to go toe to toe with them. I hate to say it like that, but yeah. So I mean, we do think that we have great partners, and because we want to be a part of that overall study experience. The reason why we want to be a part of it is because we know that we can dramatically improve it.
Yeah.
Because in our opinion, we're not going to do something if we can make it a little bit better. We need to make it a lot better, like no question, like clearly better. So I do see that happening in kind of like the lesson plan space, and that's kind of where Quizlet is, like flashcards, quizzes, things like that. We do think that could be dramatically improved. There's yeah, we're working with again, we have an amazing partnership with NVIDIA, so we're working with them on a few cool things that are going to come out soon. But yeah, so again, LMS systems and things like that, we love them. We're going to be integrated with them. We love that partnership. But yeah, with Quizlet and people, things in the study space, it is going to be some toe to toe action. But it's all because we know that we can dramatically improve the study experience. That's it.
That sounds great. Last question. What's
Yeah, of
next
course.
for you guys? What are you what's the can you where are you expanding to? Where are you excited about working? What are kind of the big features that you're excited about coming up for you next?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, so I think what's next for us is we are really hitting a lot of great strides, Stephen. And I'm very, very fortunate for this. Our engineering team is very happy. Our investors are very happy, and our clientele are happy. And the reason why they are that way is because we started off very small. We were doing a lot of cold outreach and things like that. And we had this idea that it wasn't built out yet. So it was kind of, people were worrying about like, okay, can they provide? But now that we have this platform, we're gaining. We're hoping to we're building out our pipeline right now very strongly. Our client pipeline. People are seeing the value. So that's what we're working on right now, is building out our client pipeline. We have an amazing conference at EDUCAUSE in San Antonio on October 21st to the 24th. We'll be presenting on the 22nd. But yeah, so that's going to be our debut for sure. We have a lot of clientele, right? That are looking at us, potential clientele, current clientele, but that's going to be our main debut right there. So that's where we are right now. But when it comes to the future, I mean, Stephen, there's some really, really interesting things that are happening right now. We have, obviously we're going to be coming out with a really, really great lesson plan mode with things like quizzes, knowledge maps, progress tracking, things like that. There's going to be a lot of capabilities involved in there that are very intuitive for the user, and there's going to be some wow moments for sure. We also have a conversation mode, which we think is really great. There's a few gaps in
conversation mode. That's audio conversation.
Yes, speech to speech.
Oh,
yeah,
speech to speech. Oh, yeah, that is exciting. Yep.
Right. Yeah, and the cool thing is, what we're working on right now is there's some conversations that are good for text. If you're dissecting an equation or something like that, or heavy financial material, and then there's some things that are good for like brainstorming. So we're coming up with a way to kind of intuitively and organically switch between those two topics instead of just having them all.
I didn't think about that. Try having a conversation about calculus and formulas, and it's probably pretty hard if it's an audio conversation when you're strolling around the campus. But yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, so things like that. And then one other thing is a group mode, which I keep name dropping this, but there's such a great partner to us. NVIDIA has really helped us a lot with our brainstorming for a group mode where multiple students can interact with one model. That is a very, very simple way to say what we're up to. But yeah, you can see that we want the chatbot interface that we currently have to, if I'm being honest, to be a subservice of our overall platform. Yeah. And that is what's exactly going to happen. That's what's exactly going to happen. So really excited for the future, and really excited to have a great team. Love my team. We've gotten very lucky, and great investors. And yeah, I'm really, really excited for what we're about to do, and can't wait to show it to everybody out there.
All of this is super exciting. Paul, want to thank you for your time today. I wish you the best of luck on this product. I'm excited about it. I like where you're going with it. And thank you for your time today.
Yeah, of course, Stephen. And thank you so much again. Really appreciate you. A big fan of the podcast. So happy that you invited us on.
Thank you for joining us for the OpenAI Changes Everything podcast, where we explore how OpenAI is transforming the future of humanity. Please remember to subscribe to ensure that you receive future episodes.